to our side, we have the beautiful doctor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ardis Martin, welcome to Dream Team Radio.
Thank you so much.
And today we're going to be talking about childhood bullying and this epidemic that has, crippled our country, essentially. We can't go a week without seeing another tragic story. Just another one. College football player. This morning, the news broke that he took his own life.
Not only are we talking about childhood bullying, we're also talking about youth mental health as well, because a lot of our youth out there are finding themselves in trouble, in depression and things of that nature. So we have the doctor here this morning taking all of your questions. And I just want to ask, Doctor, first of all, what do you think the reason for so many young people finding themselves in trouble right now? I don't know. It seems like lately it's really become prevalent. Is it just because we're now noticing it, or has it always been there?
I think it's a combination. So it always has been there, but as far as the fact that there's a lot of stress that kids have today, even in college, even in medicine itself, as far as there's high suicide rate even in our field. And the reason this happens a lot of times, the stigma that we have as far as mental health is very bad still. So a lot of times people just won't seek help, especially in communities of color. There's the stigma is there, and people just don't. They believe that that's a weakness if they're trying to seek help. So trying to get the message out there that it's an illness, just like any other illness. Physical health and mental health are combined, and we need to kind of treat both. We got to get people in so that they can be assessed and treated, so then that way we can prevent these issues from happening.
Why do you think that young people are finding themselves nowadays? I mean, of course, older people and parents, we have our stresses, but, you have children who are going to school and finding themselves in stressful situations at school where they're supposed to be learning and having fun and making friends and things of that nature. Why are they in so much trouble right now?
Bullying plays a big part in that, but also the stress that kids have as far as trying to excel, trying to become something in the future. Academically, stress is a big feature for kids, but also just the fact that sometimes, if you feel like you're different from everyone else and people pick up on that, then you're more prone to be bullied in the first place, which can be a problem.
And with children spending so much time during the day with teachers, are teachers currently being trained, to look for signs of bullying? Is there some sort of network being built, for teachers to reach out and, what are the symptoms of a child that's being bullied?
There's supposed to be. Each school, depending on the state, has requirements for bullying programs, and it just depends on the school district and the particular school and how they handle that. And the teachers are supposed to be trained in that. You can kind of find that in the state level as far as like what specific things are being done or going to the specific schools. So they do know those signs. A lot of times the kids that are being bullied a lot of times don't want to go to school. So it creates a lot of school phobia. Kids that are coming home with these, physical features, they're like they've been hurt and they're like trying to explain it away, because maybe someone has been physically bullying them. Because bullying can come in different forms. So it can come verbally, it can come physically, and then it also comes socially. When social is a big piece, especially for female bullying, because a lot of times it's relational as far as making someone feel embarrassed or affecting their friend group and making them feel more isolated and alone. But the biggest piece is like a lot of times kids don't want to go to school. They have problems as far as they're coming home with feeling really hungry because something happened at lunchtime. Someone took their lunch, or they weren't able to eat lunch because of the fact they were worried or fearful about what's going on.
I had a nephew who was getting bullied. He went from being an A student to like a C and D student within the course of a year.
Exactly. So academic performance definitely goes down.
And he once he was removed from that school, my mom tried everything to get some help. Wasn't there. And once he moved to another school, he was immediately within another year back on the honor roll. So you can also say that it affects them in their education as well.
Very much so.
The conversation is still going. If you can't get to the telephone, but you can get on Facebook, just go to the official KBLX Facebook fan page and you will see a conversation happening. And there's a comment that stands out. It said, "It starts at home. Please guide your kids with healthy attitudes towards their peers." Now, we know that parents are under so much stress, and sometimes the kids end up, hearing too much about what's going on inside of the house. So how do you teach parents, to have have their kids be, stand-up citizens when they're under so much pressure?
I think part of it also is that, unfortunately, kids that are bullies sometimes become adults who bully. So again, that's something that can be passed down to your kids. So making sure that parents are aware of the way that they engage with others, because again, the biggest piece for how kids engage is based on the modeling that they see at home, and that's as far as like with their spouses and also with their kids, being able to kind of like talk to them in an appropriate manner. If they make mistakes or if they're acting in anger themselves, making sure that like again letting the kids know that this is not about you. I'm apologizing, so that they take responsibility for their behaviors as well. But being able to teach kids that it's okay to express their emotions and how to help them understand the appropriate way to express that, because a lot of times the anger can get away from us and not being able to realize that again the sadness or fear that's really the issue at hand isn't really being addressed, which then can get out of control when they're taking those things from one environment to the next and back and forth.
We always say that we need to look for signs in our children, especially when they're being bullied, like I was talking about earlier, their grades drop. How can a parent look for the signs that their child is the bully?
A lot of times they can be kids that are just kind of really aggressive, like to be in control and over-controlling in different environments. They can see that sometimes on the playground or with their peers. A lot of times there'll be situations where the peers seem fearful around the kid, not to the degree of like running away from them, but they have them like in order, like the whole kind of mean girl kind of philosophy that you see in different movies. As far as like again, they know their place, and if they know not to get out of that place. So kind of watching the interactions that they have with their peers, but also even with the way they interact with their own parents, because sometimes they can be more defiant as well.
Or even with their siblings, you think?
Yeah, and sometimes more aggressive than the average kid would be that has those problems.
And doctor, I want to ask you something about financial help for seeking out, counseling or, perhaps therapy. Can you use government assistance for that?
Yes, so Medi-Cal is definitely something you can use. And other private insurance, of course, is always available. A lot of times you can look towards your local community mental health center. So they typically will take Medi-Cal or any kind of government assistance as far as treatment. Children's Hospital in town, especially in Oakland, definitely takes Medi-Cal, and they have an association with the University of California in San Francisco. So a lot of times in areas where there is a training program, that also is a good place sometimes to get help for lower income people as well.
Now let's take Children's Hospital Oakland, for example. Let's just say a parent is like, today's the day. Can they just walk in and say, look, I believe that my child needs mental health services, or do you recommend them calling ahead? Because things happen in an instant, where they're just like, today's the day.
Right. So I think it really depends on the urgency. So if it's a situation where there's a concern that the child is, in any way a danger to themselves or others, then going to any local ER is the best thing to do, because that way they can be assessed by someone there and they can determine what needs to be done as far as immediately, whether someone needs to be hospitalized, especially if there's an issue of them harming themselves, or any other support systems that can be put in place. They could be good resources as well as far as like getting you back into the community as far as outpatient services. But otherwise it'd be worthwhile to give a call, because that way you can kind of set up an appointment to kind of come in to be evaluated to kind of see what other issues are present. Just because a lot of times, again, especially in a situation where it's mental health issues, we need to figure out what it is. Is it a kid that's having depression, a kid that's having anxiety, because all those issues definitely can have a big impact on their ability to function.
We were talking about the stigma, especially amongst African Americans and minorities with mental health. But not only is there the stigma, but there's also, I think, a lack of programs and a lack of places for them to go. Do you know of any programs that cater to African Americans and minorities where they can reach out and get the help where there may not be other plans or programs available?
That I'm not sure of as far as in the area. There's different associations. There's like a Black Psychologist Association, there's Black Psychiatry Association. So those are things you can, check in online and then kind of see state to state what people are available in the area.
In your area.
And again, there's always a training programs that we have in different areas that sometimes can also be good resources as well. But I think a lot of times you have to kind of look online and kind of see what's available, just because there is a shortage of African Americans in medicine in general. So especially when you go into psychiatry and then even further into child psychiatry.
All right, young people, you hear that?
Dr. Martin.
Yes.
But you remind me of my family members because you talk fast like me.
Sorry.
But I like it, though. But I want to ask you something. Do you think you run across a lot of bullying within the family? Like you got parents that tell their kids or put their kid in their kids' head what they're supposed to be instead of what they want to be? and they would get pressured enough to think they're failing and do something to themselves, like suicide or something?
It does happen. I think just it depends on that whole baseline we talked about before, as far as the parents being able to kind of know what their mental health issues are. Because again, if people have issues with trauma or past trauma, that is definitely going to lead to more issues as far as the way that they're engaging with their kids. And the whole point of being a parent is to kind of help, guide your child, help them have good self-esteem so they can kind of look towards their future. But depending on the way you were raised or the things that happened in your past, that definitely can impact the way that you're going to be interacting with your own child. I know a lot of times in treatment, the parents are often bringing their kid in saying fix them, but the big issue is really like, well, we need to look at the whole system and look at the way that you're parenting, the way that you're kind of dealing with things yourself, and you need to get additional help. So it definitely can be an issue as far as their expectations for maybe the fact that they didn't get where they wanted to in their lives, that they're kind of like pushing onto their child, and the child not really wanting to do those things and feeling the pressure to do so. And if they can't do that, academically or just because of the wants that they have, they definitely can make them feel more depressed, more anxious, and then kind of push them to those ideas as well. Because if you don't have support, that's the biggest issue with regards to kids committing suicide, especially in teens, because it is the second leading cause of death among people 15 to 24, and the third leading cause of death between 10 and 12.
So that I'm not the only parent struggling with this, because I thought it was only me.
648, you are not alone.
Wow. And especially the parent was talking about social media, which is a big thing. One of the stories that really got us to do this town hall was a young lady. It was a weekend where two young ladies committed suicide, two teenage girls. And one of the reasons one of them did it was because she got jumped on at school and somebody filmed it on the phone and put it on a social media site. So it went all over the world. And you figure, I think you were saying earlier, back in the day, if you got bullied, maybe your parents knew about it, maybe the few kids at school who were around. But nowadays with social media, you could find yourself on a website with everybody looking at you being attacked. So that adds, I think it takes it up to another level. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely, because again, it's out there, and then you don't just have the people that are in your surroundings as far as the people that are bullying you, right? Or even the peers in your school that ideally should be supporting you, because the whole idea of the bystander issue is big. If there's someone that would actually stand up or make sure the kids that are being bullied are be taken in and sitting with them at lunch and making sure they're okay, it would make things a lot easier for them and better for them. But the problem with, as far as with the internet, is that when it is out there, then you get people from anywhere that could comment on it. And unfortunately, saying negative things, and there's someone you don't even know that's making a comment about how you got beat up or that you didn't do this or there's something wrong with you, it's hard for a kid to take. It's someone that's it's invisible in many ways. Is there a plan of action that you advise for a parent? Let's say their child, they come to them saying, what, I'm on Snapchat. What's the course of action? How do you have the conversation to let this child know that their life is not over? Because they think their life's over. Right. They're never going to be able to bounce back and come back from this. So how do you coax them out of that headspace? Well, I think in general, making sure that parents are very open with their kids initially to let them know that anything that they want to talk about, they're there for them to talk about it. Because a lot of times bullying isn't reported to parents, isn't reported to schools, so kids kind of just suffer alone. And I think making sure that there's open dialogue so that way they know to feel comfortable about it. But also to make them, if kids come to you, don't kind of push it away like, oh, it's no big deal, you'll be fine, because a lot of times then it's very dismissive, which
and you don't know the extent of
exactly. So you need to be like, yes, I understand, get the story, write it down, make sure you have all the facts, so that way it's something that you can take to the school and let the school know what's going on about it as well, so that way there's a trail of the information, because I think that's the biggest piece as far as taking the steps to make sure things are being done, and if they're not done appropriately at one level, then uptaking it higher as you need to, as far as whether you need to go to the school district and things like that. But I think just within the family itself, making sure that the kids know that they can come to me and talk to me about these different things is the most important, and help them understand that they didn't do anything wrong, because a lot of times kids start thinking, well, it must be me, and that's where things get dangerous, because then you start internalizing things. Why do you think parents are so resistant to talk to each other? Let's say if I find out that my child is
bullying your
child, what's the disconnect
disconnect between the two families rather than saying, we have a problem here. Why do parents add gasoline to this fire?
Well, because again, they take it personally, and no one wants it to be the parent of the kid that's a bully, right? It's like, no, my kid doesn't do that. I know how he behaves at school, at home. He wouldn't do that. He's a nice kid. And again, I think, like I said, sometimes that's the dynamic of the household. This is the way that they all kind of function. So these behaviors may not be seen as negative or bad. They could say like, well, you need to tell your kid to kind of buck up and be more assertive. And you're kind of like, well, that's not really the issue. The fact that this is someone that's hurting someone else and there's no reason for it. So I think a lot of times that's where the disconnect can come in. As far as like, you don't want to be that, you'd be told like your kid's doing something. People get very defensive.
Have we gotten into a culture of bullying? Because when you look at the websites and you look at on your social media timeline, you see a lot of times too, you see African Americans engaging in fighting, and then you have a bunch of people standing around, and instead of helping, they're filming and putting it on Facebook and put it on social media. Are they just as guilty as the person doing the physical harm when you're standing around and filming and encouraging the behavior?
Yeah, because again, the piece is like, there's the kid that's being bullied, the kid that's doing the bullying, and then you have the bystander. So I think all are going to have problems with regards to what's going on. And as I said before, if we had it where the bystanders are actually saying something and standing up for the other kids, then these things will decrease because the bullies are empowered. They want power, then they have people watching, and that makes them even more prone to kind of keep doing the behaviors they're doing. And unfortunately, with regards to social media, as far as being able to kind of take a video and watch things, you're removing yourself, right, from the situation. So the emotional attachment that you should be having for someone or feeling for someone, the empathy is removed. So I think that's where the problem comes in too. And then people can look at it in a different way. It's like, and then they kind of examine it and laugh about it. And it's like, well, that's a part that's inappropriate.